We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Hello, lady, we going for a ride.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Is he nuts?
You know nuts. He's crazy.
Molaram, prepare to meet Kali in hell.
Hello and welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I'm one of the two hosts of this sweet podcast.
And I'm Rich and I'm the other host of this sweet podcast. Think of me as Sherlock to Dave's Watson. He's the trusty companion I've always needed, and for me, it's all elementary.
It's good. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, their worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we quite often drift off and talk about other things, sometimes movies and sometimes life in general.
And sometimes we do drop big fat spoilers. So if we mention a film you haven't seen, step away from the computer, go outside, check your tyre pressure, because you know it'll be down, and then come back in and get on with the podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Tom Melia.
Tom is an incredible screenwriter. He has written loads of amazing things. One of our absolute favourite movies of last year, Rye Lane, Tom co-wrote. And he's just also brilliant to chat to.
We're very excited to sit down with Tom and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Tom Melia's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy!
What is the first sequel you remember seeing when you were young?
Yeah, I come from a big family, and on Boxing Day every year we'd all get together. So there'd be 15 kids all knocking around, and eventually we'd end up in a bedroom with a tiny TV watching whatever film was on. So we'd watch, the Indiana Joneses and Back to the Futures, Jaws, James Bond. So I think all of those films I probably watched in the wrong order and just wasn't really aware that they were sequels. They just kind of existed. But the first ones that I can remember being really excited by were Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. There was a palpable excitement in my school when that was on the way. And then also Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. But then the one that is kind of seared into my mind was everyone's got your dad's mate who's not really your uncle, but you call him your uncle. And ours was called Jeff, and he was a painter and decorator who was missing a pinky on one of his hands. And he came, it must have been near Christmas 92, maybe. And he came to pick my dad up to go to the pub. And he must have panicked on the way to our house and thought, I've got to get him a Christmas present, even though he had never bought us a present before. And he turned up, I can't remember what my sister got, but he turned up with Batman Returns on VHS for me. Oh. And it was a 15 and I was probably, 8. So immediately my mum was like, there's no way you're watching that. But that probably lasted 2 weeks of me nagging before she let me watch it. And I don't think I'd seen Batman before because I was too little. And it blew my head off, Batman Returns. It was just, I'd never seen something that kind of weird and dark. And it was kind of exciting, but it was also sick. Danny DeVito, who I'd probably only seen in Twins by that point, was suddenly oozing kind of black oil from his mouth. And all of my screen crushes were probably, very girls next door, like Andy from the Goonies, and suddenly here's Michelle Pfeiffer in a cat suit. I just didn't know what to do with it. I just remember feeling dirty after I finished watching it, but also like I wanted to watch it immediately all over again. So yeah, I think that's the first one that lodged in my head as the sequel.
Amazing.
And did you go back and annoy people and like, I heard there's a Batman film. Can I watch Batman?
Yeah, I think I definitely did. I think I probably actively, but then in those days, back in the old days, you would have had to annoy your parents about going to the video shop and getting it out. And I think
Massively. I
think probably after seeing the damage that Batman Returns did to me, I'm sure that my mum was not in a hurry for me to revisit. So I might have even watched Batman Forever before I watched the original. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's a great Batman film. Were you showing off the next day at school that you watched Batman Returns?
100%. Because we didn't have that many VHSs by that point, and some of my mates had just got Sky, so they were showing off about all the stuff they were watching and wrestling, things that I hadn't seen yet. So I definitely held that and kind of wafted it around. That was my one thing to show off about. I had this magic VHS. I
do remember the kids coming in next day showing off that they've seen a certain film and then just giving you a full rundown of that film and in like an 8-year-old's mind and how they interpreted like a film, and they always sounded magical and stuff. Have you gone back and watched the Secret of the Ooze, the Turtles film?
Have I? I don't think I have. The only thing I remember from it is that Vanilla Ice song halfway through it. Is it awful?
It's I watched it. Well, I watched it recently. I did the first two again, like you. I was like, oh, I have such fond memories of these, and they're such brilliant films. And then the first one's just about holds up, and I think the second one is atrocious now. And I shouldn't have gone back. And that was a bad decision on my part.
Thing, man. You gotta let the nostalgia run. Like, just sometimes just don't go back to this stuff. Like, just leave it where it is.
Yes.
I got kids who absolutely love that new Seth Rogen animated Turtles film, which is really good. So I think
it's great.
I showed them the trailer for the original Turtles film, and they were like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, it looks so. At the time, those masks were like the height of technology, but now they look terrifying.
Yeah. They were so good. It was so good. Turtles was so massive, but so was Batman.
It was massive.
I think I was 9 when Batman came out, and I was obsessed with it. Like I was far too young to have seen it, but I definitely saw it very young. I had a Batman lunchbox. I had all the toys. I distinctly remember having a penguin toy that like fired its umbrella, despite not doing that at all in the film. Like, it's like. No, well, it doesn't look like Danny DeVito. The toy looked nothing like Danny DeVito.
Okay.
It's like I distinctly remember that. I've still actually got that my son has in his car collection, the little ducky car that Danny DeVito's Penguin rides in Batman Returns. So I still got a little die-cast one.
I love giving random toys from your childhood to your kids, so that when you dig through, you just find a RoboCop every now and again, or a Hook, and they don't know what it is, but you have that little glint of nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't really do that anymore, do they? With the whole toy line like they did in the 80s and the 90s.
No,
they sort of.
Star Wars obviously still
goes,
do.
But... Like I think
Lego's a big
thing, but like my son is like into toys for inappropriate video games that he's never played. So like Five Nights at Freddy's, he has Five Nights at Freddy toys that he plays with, that he's obsessed with, never having played the video game. Is purely from things that he's seen on YouTube of other people talking about it, but never actually seen them playing it because it's too scary.
They don't do it as much as they used to, but you're right, they still do it, because my son does have all the Turtles toys from the new one. And if you go into those toy shops, it's funny that they're still, rather than everything having toys, they're still doing that thing where they're trying to predict what big film's going to be. Because I remember going in recently to get a birthday present, and there was loads of Black Adam toys in the sale.
Oh, right.
And I was just thinking, that was such a big swing to decide that's the one we're going to make a full toy range for.
Yeah. Yeah, who's buying Black Adam toys?
Don't know.
Big
What
rock
kid
fans
watched that movie?
somewhere.
Just a complete aside. My kid got a comic the other day, and it has a little quiz in it of, is this an egg or is it the Rock's head? It was
Amazing.
like we're sat there playing a
Could be
little
both.
game of, is it an egg or is it the Rock?
I bet it wasn't that easy either.
No, it really wasn't. And then he said, the Rock's forehead isn't a forehead, it's a 5-head, Daddy.
Nice.
It's a big head. I read somewhere that you worked in a video store. What years were that, and how old were you?
Oh, it's a good question. I would have been 8.
Because you lived my dream.
Yeah,
mate.
that's
I would
the
have been
dream
18. It was post school, but before uni, I think. But we all worked in either video shops or cinemas, all of my mates. And my sister worked in Moonlight Movies, which was close to our house. And then I worked at Apollo Video, which is a little bit further away. And so we were all just kind of masters of our own domain at these different places. And all kind of on our days off, really sadly, we'd go and hang out in someone else's video shop. And it's just, there was this weird sense of like power, because you could deny people 18s that you went to school with and you knew perfectly well that they weren't 18, and it was your decision about whether they were going to have a good night or not. And people would come in and like grown-ups would ask your advice on things, and I remember it being a really amazing kind of magical time.
Did you work there because you were a film geek, or was it just because it was a job?
No, it was because I was a film geek. There was definitely, I'd done jobs before that, working in pub kitchens and stuff like that. That was just jobs you had to do when you're that age, but you're just miserable doing. So I definitely zoned in on that, because I think, if I'm right, you had to be 18 to work in a video shop so you could give people 18s. So I think
that would make sense.
I think I waited until the day I turned 18 and then applied to all the video shops.
Brilliant. That's just so good.
Do you have any memories of any big releases that people were mental about?
What came out while I was there? I remember on Monday mornings you would open the boxes of the new releases, and I'm really sad, I still collect old VHSs, and specifically,
No, not sad.
I collect X rentals, because I just think there's something about those big box videos that are they're just so nostalgic to me. And so on Monday mornings, you used to unpack the boxes and kind of sort out the big releases, and you'd always like put one aside for you to take home and watch later. But I remember there was some really terrible new releases my first year when I was working there. There was the Stallone remake of Get Carter. I remember that.
Oh,
right, yeah, that's
bad.
terrible.
Yeah.
There was the really bad Dungeons and Dragons film with Jeremy Irons.
Oh, the Jeremy Irons, yeah, that's bad.
I can't remember.
Did spawn like a whole franchise, weirdly, though.
Yeah. I can't remember any good ones.
There's loads of them.
Yeah, I don't remember because obviously we'd have to do the poster displays as well. The funny thing about the posters in the windows were you'd have to change the kind of lighting, the neon lighting, and you got no training to do this whatsoever. And you're like 18 and you've never changed a light bulb before. So I can distinctly remember having a pretty bad electric shock and sort of falling off the podium where you put the posters up. But you're in there on your own, so you kind of just have to go, I think I nearly died putting up a display for the remake of Get Carter. Now I just have to get back to work.
What was your best sequel ever?
Best sequel ever.
And this was a tough one for you. Thank you for all the questions.
It was. I went back and forth tonight. I feel like sequels at their most successful take the character or characters that you love and drop them into kind of a whole new story while still playing homage to what you loved about the original and sort of doing that kind of fan service, and not just trying to remake what you already did. And I think the only film I can think of that did sort of almost remake the first film and did it really successfully was Back to the Future, but they did it in that meta way of almost having the first film play in the background of the second film. And I think that's what Batman Returns did really well, by just giving that character a whole new adventure, but it's still Batman. So anyway, that was a long preamble to the fact that my best sequel is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
It's a great choice.
It's kind of, I think, is a great choice. It's sort of, it feels a bit controversial, right?
It does now, yeah.
Which is weird because when you're little, you don't know any of this stuff. You don't. It's only since kind of Twitter or reading film magazines that I've realized that this film isn't as beloved as it was for me when I was growing up. And there's this kind of feeling out there that it goes Raiders and then very closely Crusade, and then there's this massive drop off to Temple of Doom. And I just think that's bollocks. I think it's a brilliant film. And also, look, I love Crusade. I think it's perfect. I think the opening 10 minutes is one of the best openings ever.
Yeah.
With River Phoenix as the young Indy. But this film had a kind of, now when I look at it, this film had an impossible kind of task to come out and follow up one of the most beloved films of all time. So in that way, Crusade sort of had it a little bit easier because everyone apparently thought there was a bit of drop off in quality after Raiders, and then it got to kind of come and rehash the glory. But I just think Temple of Doom's brilliant. It's so dark, which is probably why the other reason why people don't like it is because it is arguably too dark for a kids film.
Yeah, it scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. I still loved it.
It's terrifying, and there's definitely kind of it's insensitive. There are some insensitive stereotyping when it comes to the Indian characters that would not fly now, and quite rightly so. But yeah, it kind of it did have this impossible task, and this is a random segue, but there's this it reminds me of this. There's that Chubby Checkers song, The Twist, right? That came out, I don't know, the 50s or whatever. And it's this massive hit, like #1 hit. And then old Chubby panicked when he did his follow-up. So he released Let's Twist Again. And it is literally the same song with slightly different lyrics. And it's him going like, hey, remember how good the twist was? Why don't we just keep the party going and like just forget that I haven't tried very hard? And I think Temple of Doom does the opposite of that. It sort of goes like, do you know what? I think it's even a prequel, isn't it?
I think it is a prequel.
Yeah. It's set in 1935.
Yeah.
Ark's 1936 and Crusade's 1938.
It would have been so much easier if it had just started and someone told Indy that the Ark of the Covenant had been stolen from that big warehouse at the end of the first film and they have to go and re-find it, and it's just like a rehash. And everyone sort of would have been happy with that, but it doesn't do that. It drops them into a whole new adventure, which obviously sort of speaks to Lucas and Spielberg's inspiration of that Saturday morning serial type thing where you get a different adventure each week. But different adventure, different supporting characters, different love interests, different villains. And I just think that is risky.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like they pulled it off.
And we get Short Round, right? Like,
and you get
loved Short Round when I was a kid. Wanted to be Short Rounds. Wanted to be indie, but, wanted to also be Short Round. And I know you did, Dave, didn't you?
I was more, because I always see myself as the sidekick, weirdly. So I was always a big, I want to be Short Rounds. And I probably like you, Tom, this was the first Indiana Jones film I ever watched. So I'm kind of like you, I'm a little bit obsessed with it, and I don't think it should be tarnished with them being the worst Indiana Jones. We'll get to the other two later. Yeah. And it's the first one I remember, and I remember just loving the set pieces, like the bridge and the runaway minecart and the lava bit, Indy being possessed and stuff like that. And I know it's insensitive now, but the whole dinner scene when I was like,
that's the bit I remember the most. My dad sat me down before I watched it, and it was like, they are going to eat monkey brains. You gotta be prepared for this. There's eyeballs in it. It's like, this is going to happen. I'm like, bring it on. Come on.
I'm the same. I loved that dinner scene. And I would kind of, look, I'm not sticking up for the insensitivity at all. But I will say that when growing up, there was I didn't think that's what India was like. I just thought that there was this scary castle where they did fucked up things. That's kind of what I thought. And they've got possessed people in the basement and they eat monkey brains upstairs. That's what I thought. But that dinner scene is so good. It's so good. But I agree. I think the set pieces, I would even argue that every Indiana Jones films has set pieces that you remember, and they're all brilliant. But I would say that this has the most of kind of standout things that you remember. There's, as you said, like the bridge chopping is brilliant, and the dinner scene and the minecart. I mean, they made roller coasters out of the minecart sequence.
Yeah.
And then you've got the opening. I think is just so brilliant. Like you have Harrison Ford walking in that white tux. It's just such like a hero entrance. And then he gets poisoned and he's looking for the antidote and Willie is looking for the diamond. And it's all to the tune of Anything Goes. And then, you get introduced to Short Round, who's Data from the Goonies. So you're already like, holy shit, I can't believe he's in it. Then Dan Aykroyd does a cameo immediately after that. Then there's that.
Didn't know that until a few years ago.
There's that amazing bit. This is all just like in the first 15 minutes. Then there's that amazing bit where Indy thinks he's got away from the villain and gives him that shit-eating grin and then slams the door of the plane and it's the villain's plane. And then the Indiana Jones score kicks in and it's just pure fucking cinema. It's unbelievable. I just think that whole opening, the confidence to go like, well, let's show people that we're not just going to do the same thing. Why don't we start with quite a long, semi-fantastical, like Busby Berkeley song and dance routine? Like, I mean, that's full Spielberg mad confidence, isn't it?
That's Spielberg scratching an itch at that point. He wanted to do a big showpiece. He's now done West Side Story, and he's like, where can I squeeze it in? Oh, I've got a place. I'll put it at the beginning of Indiana Jones 2.
Yeah,
I think that's really, brave and ballsy. But then from that point, it doesn't let go until after the plane crash, after the river rapid drop thing in the boat, until it settles in the village of India. And then it takes... it explains the story a bit, and then it builds and builds, and once you get to the castle, then it just goes again. It's a great 2 hours. How old were you when you first saw it?
I think I must have been like way too young, because I'm pretty sure that we went to see Crusade at the cinema, so I would have been, I don't know, 6. So and like you, I definitely saw Temple of Doom first, I reckon, on one of those kind of Easters with all the kids crammed into one room, so or Boxing Day or Easter. So I reckon, God, 5? I might have watched it, which is just so early. And it's like, I rewatched it for this, because any excuse to rewatch it. And that scene where they're making Indy drink the evil blood and they're whipping Short Round is so traumatic. And I'm imagining
children slaves.
And I'm imagining me watching that at 5. My oldest kid is 9 and still happily into Pixar. If I showed him that scene, he would never sleep again. So I just think 80s and 90s kids were built of sturdier stuff, because we
just watched this sort of stuff earlier, right? Like this was a family movie when we were growing up. You know, this wasn't a traumatic thing. This was just like, well, it's not real, is it? Just get on with it.
Yeah, Christmas Day. Let's watch something as a family. And I think as a dad, I'm not a dad, but my dad was so excited to show me these kind of films, like Indiana Jones is kind of like, oh yeah, I'll enjoy this and you'll enjoy this. And when we can have a good play, like have a play in the garden and pretend we're Indiana Jones with whips and everything. And every time you're on a boulder now, you're trying to jump from another boulder and you think there's lava and stuff like that. It builds childhoods, guys, if people are listening.
Completely.
And films like that were a little bit rarish, or even now, to be honest. And the scale of the set pieces, like, it feels like most of it was filmed in another country. And then when you kind of grown up and you can see what stuff's filmed in a studio, those studio set pieces are massive.
Yeah.
Which is also impressive and a great bit of filming.
Yeah, the sets they built for that sort of underground mine are so amazing. And I think what it does incredibly well also is that there's obviously the big set pieces like the mine cart chase, which is just amazing, and the dinghy drop, which I remember really loving when I was little. But then also that dinner sequence is kind of brilliant, because it's giving you they're sort of talking about plot stuff, like Indy's down one end of the table sort of talking about exposition in a really fun way, But then at the other end of the table, Willie and Short Round are just trying to have some food, and it's hilarious. And then the sequence I really loved when I was little is the insect secret passage.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, that's what it does so well. It's like even the small moments are exciting, and then there's just such a perfectly kind of calibrated sense of humor that they bring out even at the scariest moments. Just rewatching it yesterday, there was a tiny moment where they're getting Short Round and Indy are getting crushed in the spike room, and Willie is trying to figure out how to get them out, and she's begging to get in because she wants to get away from the insects, and they're begging to get out to get away from the spikes. And there's like this shot where they frame Indy through this tiny hole and his hat's getting crushed, and he just says, "Willie, we are gonna die," and he says it in such an Indiana Jones way that it made me laugh out loud, even though it's not a funny line on the page, but just the way that character so well at that point. That kind of moment of funny vulnerability is such a release.
Yeah.
What's so good about Temple of Doom as well is that you can watch it without watching The Lost Ark. You can go straight into this.
Yeah.
And it's so good at showing like this is Indiana Jones. His way is crackling. He's got a whip. He does this. I remember a lot of people don't like this. A lot of reasons for Kate Capshaw's Willie, which is she screams a lot.
Yeah,
and she's very different to Karen Allen's character, who's more of a I'll punch you in the face kind of character from Lost Ark, and the bad guy from Crusade. But I think that's what makes Willie stand out a little bit more. That she is like more of a damsel in distress.
Marion's a tomboy
person,
but Willie's not.
Yes,
it's a very different character, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I prefer Marion if I have to choose. I think she's a better character, and Willie is annoying, but I think what people forget when they just remember, that she's screaming all the time, is also how funny she is at parts like that sequence where she's running around the camp from animal to animal. And
it's great.
It's so, like, her comic timing in that is brilliant.
Yeah, you're right.
The snake on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to talk about the others. So Last Crusade, nearly a perfect film. The first three are like perfect, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kingdom of Crystal Skull.
What was that? I didn't hear that. That didn't happen, did it?
Were you excited for when that came out in, 2008, I think, now? And what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's actually, I listened to your podcast, and it's actually the answer to a question that's coming up, which is most disappointing.
Okay, so let's skip that. What do you think, Dial of Destiny?
I like it. I liked Dial of Destiny slightly more than I liked Crystal Skull, but it's sort of like, do you prefer stubbing your toe or trapping your finger in a door? Like, it doesn't... There's probably one that is slightly less painful, but they're both pretty shit.
Does it tarnish the first three for you?
No, because I sort of just forget about them. I try not to think about them too much until, you're asked questions like, what's the most disappointing sequel? And then it all comes back.
We'll get to it.
It all comes back up again. But I think, right, there's a moment at the end of Temple of Doom, just to go back for 1 second, which sort of speaks to how I felt about Kingdom Skull, which is Indy faces off against loads of swordsmen on the top of the cliff. And it's like a fan service to the first film. There's that famous Raiders moment where there's the swordsman and he reaches for his gun and he shoots him instead. And in Temple of Doom, there's loads of swordsmen, not just one, and he reaches for his gun and it's gone. So it's kind of, I just feel like that perfectly sums up the right way to do a sequel, which is, and it sort of feels like an analogy for sequels in general, which is like, pay homage but find a new way, right?
Yeah.
And I just think the follow-up films just didn't do that. It was either, both of them either felt too far away from the first three or too close. It just never got the balance right of feeling like it's its own thing. And I know it's hard. They came back after a long, long time. So you sort of have to remind people why we loved Indiana Jones in the first place. And there's stuff he can't do. So you have to pass the baton. Like, I understand all of that stuff. It just fell flat for me. And I really remember distinctly going to the cinema and taking she might be my girlfriend then, but my now wife. And she'd never seen, she did that thing where she says that she'd seen Indiana Jones, but she can't tell me a single moment. She'd be like, that hat and the whip and stuff. So I'm fairly sure she's never seen any of them all the way through. So she came with me and a couple of mates and their girlfriends, and I felt like I was really dragging them along, going like, but it's Indiana Jones. And then we left and feeling like everyone's eyes were on me going, thank you for wasting 2 hours of my life.
Oh, God.
And it just, the thing that I don't understand about them is, look, Spielberg, pound for pound, he's probably my favorite director. So this isn't shade on him. But and he's always been at the forefront of, and so's George Lucas, of kind of, technical breakthroughs in film. But I feel like we caught them at a weird time with Kingdoms of the Crystal Skull, where they kind of went, it turns out we don't have to go to the Amazon to film the Amazon stuff.
Yes.
You can just do it all on green screen and it looks fine. And it doesn't look fine. And like, if you look at that sequence we were just talking about in Temple of Doom, where Willie's going around meeting all the animals, like some of them are animatronic, some of them are real. You can't look at the monkeys and the ants and the gophers in that film and say that they hold up to any of the stuff in the originals. They're just, it all looks so fake.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's kind of like, it looks like Jumanji, which came out maybe a decade before. And you forgive it because they were just trying to sort out digital effects. And just like, there's so many fake lens flares and it just all seems so like uncanny valley. And then I'm one of those people as well that even though the Raiders of the Lost Ark had ghosts and like mad religious stuff, and Temple of Doom had, people pulling people's hearts out and stuff, for some reason,
voodoo and shit,
all of that, and voodoo shit, all of that feels so much more believable than giant alien kings.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah. We should probably ask you the next question then, and we can really get into it, because I want to talk into you that cinema experience. Quickly though, if you show your son now Indiana Jones, will you just make him watch the first 3 and ignore the other 2 and go, this is the perfect trilogy, son?
I would probably start with,
and Temple of Doom's the best.
Yeah, I'd just bully him into that. I would probably start with Crusade.
Okay.
Because it feels the most accessible, I think. And actually my daughter, who's 7, she's probably going to be the one I show it to first, because she's a bit braver in her sensibilities. But yeah, I think Crusade I'd start with, and also that first 10 minutes, they're going to dig that. Like, there is no kind of slow build. True. And then if they like that, then the first 2, and look, if they have to do the final 2, they can just find it on their own. I don't need to be the person. I'm not going through that again. I'm not recommending it to anyone.
Life finds a way.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end,
What will I become? Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
So, what is your most disappointing sequel? Not your worst sequel, Tom, but most disappointing moment.
It's definitely Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I still can't even get the title right in my head. I have to really think about it.
It's rad.
Yeah,
it's just all
it
bad.
Was dire.
I'm a die-hard indie fan. I forgive a lot of the bad bits in Dial of Destiny because I really like the opening. I even like the fake kind of de-aged indie. I can let it go because I was just so excited to be watching Indiana Jones in the cinema. But Crystal Skull, I just can't forgive it. Like, it's everything you said is just it's just awful. From Ray Winston's whatever that accent is to the CGI to Shia LaBeouf. God knows what film he's in. Everyone's in a different movie.
God.
Like, it's so bad.
Yeah, no, I agree. Dial of Destiny felt more cohesive. There were still some bits where I was like, look, Indiana Jones riding a horse through Times Square should be more exciting than this is. And I don't know why it's not more exciting, but I can only think it's got something to do with not being real, and my brain just knows it's not real. So
Yeah.
it's not. It doesn't feel like a real stunt, even if I'm sure components of it were real. So it was.
I'm guessing there's a man on a horse, but not
Somewhere
Harrison
there's a
Ford
man on a horse.
in Times Square.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's not in Times Square. I think that's the thing where, they used to have to, they're really on that rope bridge between two cliffs in Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Where
Yes.
full well they wouldn't. Like, they're in trucks in Kingdom Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
They're in, they're just in like trucks, and they're not in a truck, and it's just really weird. Like, just drive them through a field. I don't understand why it's so hard.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about the fridge, and I just don't understand how Indy's even in that situation in the first place. Like, I don't know, it all feels a bit wrong. And I even watched a YouTube video about it where they're like, he could have survived the fridge because, there could be lead-lined fridges and stuff. I'm like, but not the impact. You can't fly through the air. He might have survived the radiation blast, but not smashing himself to pieces like inside a fridge.
I've got a quick question about your first showing. You said a minute ago you took your wife and some friends to go and see Kingdom of Crystal Skull. Is that the first time your wife saw any kind of Indiana Jones that you know of?
I think she would say no. I'm pretty sure yes.
That's a bad start.
And did it do damage?
Well, she definitely hasn't watched any of the others with me, but weirdly enough,
Oh, no.
we have tickets for to see Raiders at the Albert Hall with the live orchestra
Oh, that would be amazing.
in a couple of weeks. So I'm fully ready to get to we did this with The Matrix a couple of months ago. I'm fully ready to get to the end of it and for her to say, do you know what? I haven't seen that. And me going like, I've spent 20 years telling you we should watch Raiders and just not getting around to it. So I think the damage is about to be repaired.
Good.
Yeah. How exciting were you going into that screening of the first time you've seen the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
Pretty excited. And I think the only
because the trailers were pretty cool, right?
The
And there was a
trailers
big
were good.
Spielberg was back, Harrison Ford's back, Karen Allen's back, William Hurt's in it, Ray Winston's in it. You're like, oh no, these components, this sounds like a good film. And then it starts obviously with the fridge bit. And
I didn't even hate him going into that kind of atomic testing. I thought it was really good at setting its time in kind of where we are in the history of Indiana Jones and the history of the world and stuff. And I was sort of like, Indy in the 50s, like, I'm into this. But then it just went downhill from there. So yeah, my excitement levels were pretty high, similar to how, I obviously don't learn, similar to how excited I was about Phantom Menace. But I think, and I'm sure you've done Phantom Menace already on this podcast, but I think the difference is the sinking feeling was the same, right? In Phantom Menace, you're sitting there and they're talking about Federation tax or whatever the fuck they're going on about.
Yeah.
And your
blockades
heart starts to sink and you go, oh no, I think this is going to be bad.
Yeah.
But then there's enough moments in Phantom Menace where I feel like their heart is in the right place. Like, the pod chase is inarguably really good. And Liam Neeson's great and Darth Maul's great. There just wasn't enough moments like that where I felt like they were trying to do their best. And then all those questions of why would you bring him back and why would you force Harrison Ford to put that hat on again? Because he's not enjoying himself. So it better be really good to get the gang back together, and it just wasn't.
No.
Did you have a moment afterwards trying to talk yourself into it or out of it? Like, no, that was good, wasn't it? Was that good? And then you had to have your friends and your wife like slapping you around the place going, wake up, Tom, it's crap.
No, I don't think. I think maybe I had to take the position of how bad it was just to save face, just to reassure them that the original trilogy was were all masterpieces and this is nowhere
Which
near
is like
them.
perfect.
Yeah. So I think, no, I was probably banging the drum of how bad it was pretty loudly.
It's like when you made all your friends go to watch Matrix Reloaded at midnight, Dave.
Oh yeah.
How did that go down?
Not well at 2:30 in the morning after we finished it or whatever it was. It was bad. I haven't really done many midnight screenings after that, to be honest, and dragged my friends. That was the main one. I can't remember. I mean, I did drag a few people to go and see Indiana Jones Crystal Skull, and they didn't enjoy it. And obviously, like you, I've made my wife try like the things that I like and look at her while watching it and see how she did it. And Indiana Jones, the first three, like you, she loved, like brilliant. And then she didn't really like the second one. We dragged to the last one. She thought it was okay. That's fine. Star Wars I'm a big Star Wars fan. I made her sit through all of them, but obviously I made her watch the good ones first and then did the prequels, and then gave her lots of wine and stuff through them. But she enjoys them. And she hasn't really got into the Matrixes, which is fine. The first one's great. My friend here, Rich, doesn't really like the first.
I don't
Matrix,
like any of them, Dave.
Controversial. I think the first one is a solid 5-star film.
Oh,
everyone does. It's
Richard's
just me.
wrong.
I just don't.
And also, one of the best cinema experiences of my entire life. I can still remember coming out, because this was obviously the internet was a thing when the Matrix was a thing. Otherwise, there'd be no Matrix. But it was kind of early on, so we definitely weren't reading, no Twitter. We weren't reading blogs and stuff. So we kind of went in fairly blind. We just heard it was amazing. And I can distinctly remember me and my friend Alex going to the toilet afterwards at the Odeon and not being able to pee because we'd just been so excited for 2.5 hours.
Amazing.
It's a perfect film.
I really feel that kind of like, when you say you're watching Crystal Skull and you're like the feeling of going, oh God, this isn't good. Like I still have that now. I watched Ghostbusters Frozen Empire not long ago, and I was like, about 20 minutes into that, I'm like, oh no. This is not going to be good.
I hate that because I don't know about you, but it's not like when you're a teenager and the cinema is just something you do every week, and there's sort of less pressure. You want things to be good, but you're with your mates, so if a film's bad, you sort of turn your attention to chucking popcorn or whatever you do. I mean, not me, because I've always had very strict cinema etiquette, but
good.
Now it's such a rare thing that I get to go to the cinema. That when I do go and it's bad, I'm so annoyed. It's like having a bad meal out in a restaurant. You're like, we got a babysitter for this.
Yeah.
I really hate it.
And I'm so old now. I was literally sat there going, oh, the wallpaper in this cinema is really nice.
Yeah, you're looking at the lighting rig and thinking like, I wonder who turns them off.
Yeah, they've done a good job in here.
Talking about bad films, what is your worst ever sequel?
My worst ever sequel is Son of the Mask.
Oh, yeah.
Finally,
we've been waiting for someone to pick it.
I can't believe someone, and I can. The only reason I think that someone hasn't picked this already is because no one's watched it, thankfully. And
I think that is it.
I think I've only watched it once, and I refused to rewatch it. I'm sorry, I did not rewatch it in preparation for this because
I did.
The visuals are still. Oh, I'm so. I
watched this the first time.
I've never seen it.
Please don't rewatch it.
I know, but
I've never seen it.
Neither of us had seen it, so we both had to watch it, and we've been preparing ourselves for this. We knew it was going to happen.
Well, hang on. Before I kick off, was it as bad as you thought it was going to be?
Oh, I think it might have been worse. Like genuinely worse than I thought it was going to be. It's horrible.
Yes.
In every single way.
Some of the visuals are seared into my brain. The mask sperm, I will never be able to unsee.
Was that cut out of our version?
I think that was cut out of our version, yeah. I've looked back and found bits of it, yeah. Yeah. There were no mask sperm.
The version I've seen definitely had mask sperm in it.
We've had another person on this podcast, Matt from the Sequelizers, and he brought up the mask sperm. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to see the mask sperm.
It wasn't in our version that we watched.
We rented it from Apple.
They've cut it out.
So they've cut out the mask sperm. The mask sperm is no longer...
They've erased the mask sperm from history.
I think they have, yeah.
I might have to go and look on YouTube and see if it's on there.
Jesus. Well, let me tell you, it was horrible. If you thought some of the other bits were bad, that was the worst bit.
Do you know, weirdly, I think that bit in the film would help the Son of the Mask explain a lot of what's going on. Because there's literally a cut now. They get into bed and they cut and they wake up and the alarm's going off. And that's it.
All I remember, again, did not rewatch, was I remember it was a bit like, in Roger Rabbit.
I love how you're sitting. It's just your eyes.
I'm trying to relive it for you. You know the bit in Roger Rabbit when he loads the bullets in and then they all have their own personalities when he fires them?
Yeah. Is it like that?
That's what I remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But the reason I chose it is less that it's a terrible film, but it is a terrible film. But it's almost not important enough for us to get upset about. But the reason I bring it up is I kind of feel like it's a good example of what I hate about bad sequels.
Oh, it's the perfect example. Yeah.
It's like it's the bigger problem. It's kind of studios who are making these sequels misdiagnosing what we loved about the original. So, like, as an example, Home Alone 2 is not a brilliant film. I happen to love it.
It's great, Tom. It's better than the original. Keep going.
Well, let's go back to that. But I happen to love it. But, like, even if you love it, you can't argue that it is almost a beat for beat rehash of the first one, even to the point where
Agreed.
He meets someone that seems creepy and scary at first, but then they turn out to be wise and misunderstood. And like it,
yeah.
And he doesn't throw paint cans; he throws bricks. Like, it is beat for beat, but it still completely works. And the reason it completely works is because you love that trio of Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, and Daniel Stern. You are invested in Kevin and his mum's relationship, and the whole vibe is just something that you love. And so then they go, what they then say in their studio meeting is, well, look, none of those people want to come back, but I think we can still make Home Alone films, because what people really loved was a house full of traps. And it's like, what they don't realize is the house full of traps only worked because you gave a shit and you didn't hate the characters with a passion. And I'm sort of also not naive enough to realize that studios know really deep down, and they just want to trick us into watching stuff because of brand recognition. And so that is exactly what happened with The Mask. They pretended to themselves and us that what we really loved from the first film was the green guy and the dog. And they were just like, look, Jim Carrey's not coming back, but you can still have that. And it's Jim Carrey is The Mask. Like, his mannerisms and his voice and his kind of physicality is what makes that kind of strange, weird little film completely work.
Yeah.
And without him, the minute they heard he wasn't coming back, they should have just cancelled this movie. And like, it's the same with, look, John Belushi's dead. You can't make another Blues Brothers. I'm sorry. I know you really want to, you just can't do it. And sometimes it works because, like, I would say Tremors, none of those sequels are very good, but I understand that.
They're watchable.
But watchable, because the worm is the star, right? It still works without Kevin Bacon. It's not as good, but it still works. And it's the same for a lot of horror, you know, Freddy and Jason, and kind of less so for the Halloween films because you've got Jamie Lee Curtis. But there should never have been a son of The Mask. Just like there should never have been, God, what is the terrible, which I have not seen, but I've seen the trailer for it. There's a sequel to Pet Detective, which is like a kid. Like
Junior.
Yeah. We didn't love the catchphrases. We loved Jim Carrey as that character.
And who sat in a room and thought, Jim Carrey was so good. You know who we should get? Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah. You know that guy that was sort of good in Scream 2?
Yeah. It's like
it's
the
weird.
wisecracking one from Scream 2. Yeah, because he's got the physical comedy chops. What?
And everyone loves badly animated babies. Let's get get one of those in there. And it's just so weird. And also, like, I can't believe I'm sticking up for the mythology of The Mask, but it doesn't even follow any of like the really basic forgettable rules that the first film set up. Like, it's really weird. Like The Mask allows you to do stuff in this film that it was sort of, first one was all based on, if I remember rightly, wasn't he? He's a massive fan of vintage cartoons. So therefore,
yes,
when he puts on the mask, his love of vintage cartoons comes out, and he's not, he doesn't have any confidence. So when he's got the mask on, he has the confidence of a cartoon character.
Yeah.
Whereas that baby doesn't like vintage cartoons. Why is he running around like a Looney Tune? I don't understand.
That's because he's something to do with Loki, the god now.
But also, wouldn't it suggest that the mask in the first film sort of takes your wildest fantasies and makes it real? And that cartoon thing must have been very specific to Jim Carrey. But what you're telling me now is it was just a coincidence that he liked cartoons. And actually, it will do that to anyone who puts
anyone who puts it on turns into a
mask
cartoon. Apparently, yeah.
Don't get it.
The Jeremy, again, I don't believe I'm defending it, but the Jamie Kennedy character, it does create cartoons.
He's an
have I
animator,
just
yeah.
forgotten that? Okay, well, they wedged that in.
He's trying to
But
create
then
a
Jamie
cartoon
Kennedy
at the same
doesn't
point.
particularly turn into a cartoon. He turns into like a suave kind of.
Yeah.
He turns into like what's his name from Evil Dead?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ash.
He turns into Bruce Campbell, doesn't he? When he puts the mask on, he gets the big chin, and he suddenly turns into like sophisticated kind of, or thinks he is, but is a bit rubbish. You know, it's.
And you've just brought up a perfect example of a film that, when they made the sequel, obviously it's more of a remake. They perfectly paid homage to all the moments in the first Evil Dead that you love, but just made it better and capitalized on it. And when they're giving us more money, let's make it even cooler. Whereas this is just the opposite of that. And even to the point where, and this speaks to that Indiana Jones moment on the cliffside that I was talking about earlier, they're like, oh, the song from The Mask 1 was so good. Let's just do that again.
Yeah.
And like he's in a club and he's just, but he's not as good as Jim Carrey. And the mask seems like kind of heavier, like he can't move his face as much as Jim Carrey. There's all of it, and the plastic hair is so fucking.
The hair, yeah,
it's just
yeah,
and it's 10 years later. Like, I don't know. I could sort of see the justification of a Mask sequel 3 years later. It's like, yeah, we're riding the wave. Everyone loved it. You know, we're making it 10 years later, mid 2000s. Who's asking for this? Like,
such an obvious cash in, which is just, I think, just like I said, the worst way to start a sequel is just going, we don't care about what about quality or what you loved. We just need your money.
It breaks
And
every
that is
single good sequel rule, essentially. It really does.
I've got two questions. Were you a big fan of the original? So when you saw it, you must have been young, right?
Huge fan of the original. Huge fan.
Because everyone loved Jim Carrey in that time.
Really distinctly remember that year of Jim Carrey with like Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Liar Liar.
Dumb and Dumber.
And Dumb and Dumber and Batman Forever. So probably a couple of years. But there was three. Isn't he famous because like three of them came out within one summer? I can't. But I think this might.
Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, The Mask.
Right. So I in fact, I've just remembered this memory of going to Woolworths to get my pick and mix to go and watch The Mask, and getting to the cinema and realizing I'd left my wallet, like my first Velcro wallet, in Woolworths on the till, and having to run full pelt back to Woolworths to grab my wallet and run full pelt back to the cinema in time to buy my ticket and get into The Mask. So I came, obviously I've seen it many times since, and I had the VHS and watched it a million times, but I came into the cinema late, which is like my least favorite thing to do. And I came in as they introduced Cameron Diaz. So as she's walking into the bank, I was running down the aisle, and I feel like it was like a meet cute, except one of them doesn't know the other exists and never will. But
that was a moment for me, that moment.
Huge moment.
Yeah. How did you end up watching Son of the Mask? Do you think, I love The Mask, let's watch the sequel in 2005 or whatever it was?
I can't tell you. I honestly can't tell you. I don't know how I watched it. I can't remember watching it. I have forgotten. I've pushed it out of my mind. I can only say that I would have been in my early 20s, and we were doing things.
Smoking.
Yeah, we go. We were. I didn't know what I was allowed to say. We were smoking a lot, and put it this way: when I moved out of my parents' house and I had to clear out all my VHSs and decide which ones I was going to keep and which ones I wasn't, we used to buy pirate videos from the same guy that we picked up from, and
brilliant. This is great.
It was perfect. So you'd pay a certain amount of money and you'd get both. And when I moved out of my parents' house, I had 4 copies of Scooby-Doo because I would go back a couple of weeks later and I'd go, "Oh, Scooby-Doo," and I'd forget that I'd already seen it. So I'm imagining that this felt like the perfect film to watch during that period.
Yeah.
And the fact
Yes.
that it couldn't keep that crowd happy speaks volumes to how terrible it is.
It's weird. And we haven't even talked about Alan Cumming or Bob Hoskins.
And look, and both those people I
Brilliant.
adore. Like,
Yeah.
I love Bob Hoskins is maybe one of my favorite actors of all time. Alan Cummings I really love, so I will forgive them a lot. Yeah, but
Apparently Bob Hoskins, he signed up thinking he was just going to do a voiceover of being the god. He didn't realise he was going to be on film at all.
Okay. But
I
even
see.
who thought Bob Hoskins is a good shout for Odin? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
East London Odin.
if I remember rightly, most of it he appears just as a head, right? But then he does appear at the end.
He gets full bodied
Yeah.
up at the end because him and Alan Cumming
He's
have a hug.
basically, yeah.
So I think when
a
we think
father-son
of
moment.
Odin, we all think of a 5 foot tall little fella.
I mean, Anthony Hopkins is playing it pretty well at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah. I was just reading the IMDb trivia, and there's a line that makes me laugh here, which was Jamie Kennedy reportedly hated his time in Sydney filming this movie. Hardly anyone recognised him in public, and he was repeatedly turned down by local women in bars who had no idea who he was.
Wow, that says a
That's
lot about
amazing.
Jamie Kennedy, doesn't it? Really?
And I bet that's
It might not be true. It's IMDb.
I bet that's a story he's told that is now backfired because it's just been printed as fact, like he was whinging about it. But yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, this must have been miserable to make, having to wear that every day.
Yeah.
Well, he's barely
He is,
in it.
yeah, he's hard-
As
he's,
in,
like-
he puts
That's
the mask on
true.
twice, I think.
Isn't it? Again,
The
racking
dog
my
wears the
brains.
mask more than anyone else.
Yeah.
The dog is the main
Halfway
mask
through,
wearer.
isn't he just sort of chasing after that dog? And isn't it the dog and the baby become sort of Tom and Jerry? Is that right?
Pretty much,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
He doesn't wear that. He wears the mask once when he goes to his work party, and then he wears it once at the end when he has to fight Alan Cumming, pretty much in a circus-like arena, and it's awful. And it's really weird because I was a big fan of. Do you remember the TV series Two Guys and a Girl and a Pizza Party?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
had
Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
It has the girl from Two Pizza, and I always liked her. I was like, oh, what's she done with her career? This must have sunk it.
Yeah.
And I feel really bad about that. I
I'm
was
so
like,
sorry
oh,
that I
man,
made
this-
you watch this. I'm so sorry that it's now fresher in your minds than it is in mine.
As soon as we started this podcast, we knew this was coming. We knew this day would come.
We're going to watch a lot of Dark Knight. We're going to watch a lot of Aliens, but we're also going to.
You're right.
Some of the masks
You're
is going
right.
to come up.
You've had your treat, and now it's time for some
I'm
tricks.
just surprised it took, 6 seasons to get to it. I was sure someone would have picked it by now.
But like you said, I think it's because no one's watched
Yeah,
it.
you're probably right.
What sequel seemed like a bad idea, but you ended up liking?
Oh, that is such a good question.
Franchise films you can look into, like Bonds. and
Okay, well,
Marvels.
I'm gonna be boring and not think it. Okay, well, look, because it's a quick answer. I'm gonna choose a film that I think is brilliant, and I didn't allow myself to pick it for best sequel because someone's already said it, and I didn't want to bore people. But I think Young Guns 2
This is perfect.
is brilliant, and I think it probably seemed like a bad idea, and so many elements of it seems like a bad idea. As soon as Emilio Estevez is dressed as an old man, retelling his story in the beginning, like it all seems like it might be dodgy.
Mm.
And actually, I would argue that it's better than the first one. And also, I can imagine that Charlie Sheen probably was the biggest star out of that lot at that point. And he
Yeah,
dies in
probably.
the first one.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
I
sorry.
mean, we've probably spoiled it
So
seasons ago, so don't worry about that.
Someone's picked it. It's
two
fine.
spoilers for the first one. He dies, but also he says Billy in the weirdest way. Like, go back and watch every time he says, and I think it's a decision, an acting decision he's made to mock Billy the Kid, or it's just the worst Texas accent of all time. But he sort of goes Billy every time he says it. It is so bizarre. But anyway, I think Young Guns 2, they threw everything at this film. They gave, like, John Bon Jovi did a song for it. They went, who's the new kind of 20-year-old star, Christian Slater, let's stick him in it. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just, it sort of does rehash the first one a little bit, but it's just so good.
I don't think I've ever seen the first one still. I have watched the second one now because Michael Marsden picked it. And just the soundtrack, man, is just Dead or Alive. I'm a cow. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's all good. And like the cast was so hot right then. You've got like Kiefer Sutherland, haven't you? And people like that.
Alan Rudd and the like fresh out of Ferris Bueller.
And they do some stuff with horses they'll never get away with now. So it's all like people on horses, which is good. It is fun, but yeah, him as aged up at the beginning and end.
It's weird, isn't it?
That's a weird choice.
He could have just got his dad to do it, you know, like.
That's true.
Yeah,
I've got a feeling he might have written it, Emilio Estevez.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me.
I might be wrong, but I feel like there is a very good reason why he gets to do old man makeup in it. I think he had a hand in writing that film. I'll check. I could be wrong.
I think it was John Fusco, wasn't it, who did like, what else did he do? What's the Viggo Mortensen one? Hidalgo?
Oh, yeah.
I think he's the one that wrote, and then he's done all those like spirit, like horse animated movies since then.
Okay.
He loves horses.
He loves
horses. Really into horses.
Yeah. He really does. What? So you watch Top Young Guns? I couldn't get my head out of Top Gun then for a moment.
I think
Young Guns.
Yeah.
And then I was a fan of the second one. Were you looking forward to this Video Days?
Definitely Video Days. I definitely watched Young Guns first, which was an 18. So probably one of the first 18s I watched.
Wow.
And I remember distinctly how I got that video. There was a fair near my house, and there was a game where you had to throw darts, and like if you got a bullseye or whatever, you'd win a prize. But the guy had lined up all the prizes on a shelf, and some of them were VHSs. And me and my mates realised that if you just throw the darts at the VHSs, you could knock them down the back of the stall, and your other mate could grab it. And you'd have a little hole. You'd have a hole in the box, but you'd have a VHS. So we all got our hands on some very inappropriate VHS on that day. But I got Young Guns, and I still have it over on a shelf to my right. But so
still
I definitely watched Young
in
Guns first. With a dart hole in it, yeah. And what I distinctly remember, the first one is a little bit straighter, like it's sort of taking it a bit more seriously. It's a bit more po-faced. Like Terrence Stamp's in it doing proper acting, and what Young Guns 2 is just like, it feels like everyone's having an absolute blast making that film, and they really lean into like teenagers love the first one, and it's like the Brat Pack, and we should just lean into how much fun it is, and more shootouts and a better soundtrack. And so all of that stuff shouldn't have worked, and then just completely 100% did.
What is your dream sequel?
My dream sequel, and I cannot believe that I'm having to say this because it just should have happened by now, is The Nice Guys.
It's a great shout. It's a great shout.
It's the best. It's the
I
best
genuinely
shout.
thought someone had picked this because I can just distinctly remember talking to Dave about it, but I think I just watched it and then we talked about it.
I think it's one of those sequels when I said it's going to come up on the podcast at some point.
Yeah.
So you should watch it because it's brilliant.
It is brilliant. It is.
Sorry, Tom. This is your pick.
No. Two films that I think I cannot believe don't have a sequel yet are Dread, which has already been picked by someone on the pod, and then this. It just doesn't make any sense, unless I suppose if you showed us the numbers or whatever, then it would make perfect sense. But it's one of those films that I knew I would love. I just knew it. Like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think is a brilliant, perfect film. Good. And you know, I was already a fan of Shane Black. I love Lethal Weapon, and huge fan of Russell Crowe at this point. I liked Ryan Gosling. He wasn't sort of who he is now. And as soon as it started and you get that vintage Warner Brothers logo and then the song kicks in, I was just like, oh, I'm all over this film. I just knew that I was going to adore it. And then I did. And and you get the dual VO. So like it feels like one of those hard-boiled detective films that, you know, that you're used to. And it's like kind of, it's not quite noir because quite kind of bright lights in LA and stuff, but it's a bit noirish. But then it really sets its stall out so quickly on the tone that you are going to expect. There's this really gutsy, funny cut really early on where Ryan Gosling's doing some private detective stuff and he punches out a pane in a door and cuts his wrist, and there's a hard cut to him in an ambulance and them shouting, "We're going to lose him." And it just completely, like, really economically sets up that he is useless.
Yes.
In a real, like, don't expect anything from this guy type way. And I just think, obviously, Shane Black is incredibly good at those kind of duos that shouldn't be, that are forced together and then learn to love each other. Like Lethal Weapon sort of was the first or best example of that I can think of. So he knows how to do it, but it's I think he makes it look effortless. And I think cinema is littered with duos that have zero chemistry that prove that it is not effortless. And it's just, everyone is firing on all cylinders in this film.
Yeah. We should be knee deep into Nice Guys sequels by now, or at least one every decade.
But
as in
you hit the nail on the head
80s.
of why we're not. It's because it just didn't make any money at all.
Oh, it made no money.
It made nothing. Like
That must be it. But you'd hope that if Gosling now wanted to do it, like, they must know that the sequel would be bigger than the first one with who he is now. And the weird thing is like, when Barbie came out, everyone was like, "Oh, Ryan Gosling's really funny." But if you've watched The Nice Guys, you're already aware of how
funny he is.
Yeah.
There's that sequence where Russell Crowe knocks on the toilet door in the bowling alley and he opens it with a gun in his hand. And then he's trying to keep the door open and keep the gun on Russell Crowe, but then he drops his cigarette into his lap. And it's like, it's so small.
Yeah.
But the physical comedy in that moment of, like, the stall door closing multiple times and him trying to act tough is just so perfect. Like, and I think it's harder to do than he's making it seem.
Yes, he makes that kind of comedy look very, very easy. He's a great comedian actor. Like, watch his Saturday Night Live stuff the other day. His new, it was so good. And his Papyrus Avatar sketch from a few years back is great. And that crazy little thing called Love, whatever it is, that rom-com he did with Steve Carell and that.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. And Barbie is Ken. He's hilarious. He's so gifted at having brilliant chemistry with anybody, I believe. Like,
you're right.
It's a gift. He can make anyone shine, anything shine who's opposite him. In any film he's pretty much done, I think. He's brilliant. And yeah, him and Crow in this, the partnership they have shouldn't work, but it does, and on every level. It's pretty perfect. I remember seeing this in the cinema because I was a big Shane Black fan. I was like, this is the guy who wrote Lethal Weapon, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think he did The Last Boy Scout as well, didn't he? Write that
he did, yeah.
Scott. And I mean, that Predator film can go away.
Yeah, we forget that.
I don't understand what happened there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not his vehicle, not his thing, I would say. But he's such a gifted writer, especially when it comes to two men. It seems going back at each other. Man, and he made the 70s, that era, everything make it feel so real and lived in and so what. And I would like to see no one in the 80s now, and then another 10 years in the 90s. I think that'd be really funny because it sets it up so perfectly for the sequel at the end. Like, oh, I've got this advert for The Nice Guys, and it shows them together. It's like, why do I look Mexican?
And also what it promises as well is, it's like Lethal Weapon. Look, I still think number 2 is a great film, but what it sort of does is it makes those two so solid by the end of it. Like, you completely know why they love each other. Like, Murtaugh sees him as another kid to add to his brood. And for Riggs, like, it's the one bit of stability he has in his life, and it makes, being part of this family makes life worth living and all that stuff. But arguably that takes a bit of heat out of the following films, which is why they have to put Joe Pesci in there to create someone for them to be up against. Whereas this sort of does that perfect thing of it kind of infuses them together through circumstance, but you still know that relationship's going to carry on exactly the same afterwards. Like, yes, they are fonder of each other, but Russell Crowe thinks that he is a useless idiot still. Ryan Gosling thinks Ryan Gosling thinks he doesn't need Russell Crowe and he knows what he's doing, when really he really needs Russell Crowe and he doesn't know what he's doing. So I just think it it set it up, like you say, so perfectly. And also, I would go as far as to say that I think the mystery in this is too convoluted. I actually think it's not a
You're right.
perfect film. But I think that's even more of a reason to give us more of them, because I think there is an even better film with these characters that we could have got next in the second or the third installment. And I would be perfectly happy to watch one of these every 2 years.
Yeah. I like in this film how they get everything done accidentally. Like everything drops into the lap, like dead bodies. The girl drops in the car when they go to take the money and they hit her thing, and they find out it's not money. It's just, it's perfect. What was it, 2016 it came out?
2016, yeah.
Sounds right, yeah.
And Tom, did you see it at the cinema?
I think I must have. I don't remember watching it when it came out, so I think I must have. And maybe by that point, I was in the going to the cinema on my own at 11 a.m. type vibe.
Yeah, that's us.
I think I probably saw it on my own and then did that thing where no one else saw it for ages until it came out. So I was sort of...
Well, we can blame Rich for that, but Rich did just have a baby or something.
You saw it after you got badgered into watching it.
Yeah. Dave told me I had to watch it, basically. 2016 was all a blur, because I sort of knew it existed, but 2015, 2016 was a bit of a blur because my son was born and it was crazy. I didn't sleep. Definitely didn't go to the cinema because I would have just slept in a dark room. But yeah, so I didn't see a lot of movies from around that time. But yeah, so I didn't know anything about it until Dave was like, you've got to see this movie. You've got to watch this movie. You've got to watch it. And then I finally relented and I was like, oh yeah, I do need to watch it. Because I really love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. And we're not going to get a sequel to that.
No.
So I think this is the one where there is a small slither of hope. Because, Robert Downey Jr. is too big. Val Kilmer's poorly, obviously. So I think the hopes of that have gone. But I still think I would not be surprised if we suddenly heard this was coming.
It wouldn't surprise me because I have a theory about, for years, I think everyone thought Ryan Gosling was still that guy from The Notebook. For some reason, they hadn't been watching what he's been doing. And then eventually this has come out, Barbie's come out, and we're like, fucking hell, Ryan Gosling was really acting and really funny. And I think a lot of us going, we know. We watched The Nice Guys.
Because we've got...
Where were you 10 years ago kind of thing?
Yeah.
Get on it.
Because Shane Black's doing this superhero thing with The Rock, isn't he? That's his next... That's the thing he's working on now. Like Doc Savage, is it? Dr. Savage, something like that?
I think that's a rumour.
Yeah, that's a rumour. I thought... No, okay.
No, because I think The Rock's next doing a Benny Safdie wrestling film.
Oh, okay.
For A24. He's trying to get his credibility and the love for him back. Obviously, he went back to do wrestling and WrestleMania as The Rock.
Yeah.
That's gone very well because his chips haven't been as high recently after the Black Adams. He hasn't had a real hit. I don't know how I've started to talk about The Rock.
I don't know. No.
Yeah, Doc Savage sounds too much like Black Adam to me. Surely they're not going to give him another chance.
It does sound similar to Black Adam. But also, Shane Black's not prolific as a director, is he?
Or as a writer, it seems.
Well, I mean, what, 20 odd movies I think he's written?
He was the $1 million guy, wasn't he? So when I first wanted to be a writer, age 14, that's what you thought it was going to be like. He would just come up with an idea and someone would give him $4 million for it. So I think from reading interviews with him, I just think he got in this, he basically made his fortune in his 20s. And then so sort of got to sit back a little bit and think about what he wanted to do. Because
he was an actor first, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in Predator, wasn't he? That's what the connection is.
Yeah. Hawkins.
Yeah, he hasn't done enough. And I think he was one of the writers on Last Action Hero.
Yeah,
and I think that sort of broke him. After that, I think he took loads of time off, understandably. Yeah, but I think he's one of the best writers out there. So and look, we haven't even mentioned Russell Crowe has the unflashy role in this and just anchors the entire thing. He is like the Tom Cruise in Rain Man. It's kind of almost thankless, that role, but he just does it so well.
So well. The scene when they go up in the lift and we're going to feed these people, and they get in and then they the dying's going around them and they just step back. It's just one of those.
But I love it that
perfect scenes.
Russell Crowe is the kind of, he's the hard man, but he's also not. He's not a superhero.
Well, he's got to put his glasses on.
Yeah, exactly. He's like
Yeah.
he's an aging ex-cop. You know, he's not perfect. He doesn't come in and like save the day without being like slightly also a bit rubbish.
He's also a bad man because he is willing to kill people, and obviously that's where the daughter comes in and makes him a better man kind of thing. And I think he likes that, bringing out this Ryan Gosling and the daughter bring out of him. I think, Tom, like you, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe next year, the year after that, we get another one. How old is Russell Crowe though? And he you know,
Look, he rode around on that moped in Rome in Pope's Exorcist. He can punch a few guys in this.
Yeah, that's true. He's touring with his band at the moment. He's going to do Glastonbury. I saw that on his Instagram the other day. It's a brilliant film, and I can't believe, like you, I can't believe this and Dread don't have a sequel. So
this has got to be purely down to money, hasn't it? Because it made 70 million, I think, and it cost 50, so it basically made a loss. You know,
but look, Road. If they make it for not, you know, I want to see it in the cinema, but like Roadhouse.
Yeah,
I think the Venn diagram of people who went, yes, I love Roadhouse, and didn't just go, what's this? Jake Gyllenhaal's got his top off. You know, I think that film's done incredibly well on Prime, and
yes.
And you definitely don't have to look. I love the original, but you don't have to watch the original to enjoy it. I think most people probably haven't seen the original who are watching the new one, so I think suddenly it doesn't matter quite as much about how much the first one made. I think if you stick Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling on a tile on Amazon or Netflix, it'll be the biggest film.
It would also work as a TV series.
It would, but then my fear is that they'll just recast it when they do that, like they did. Do you remember that terrible Ferris Bueller TV series that came out?
Well, we didn't know about that until we watched Ferris Bueller for Someone's Dream, and I was like, did you know there was a Jennifer Aniston's in a TV series? I've never seen it.
Oh, it's terrible. But yeah, so I live in fear of TV series of films I love.
Yeah, it's shaky. Those were Tom Melia's Unequal Sequels. That was a good episode.
Loved that episode. Tom's a very nice guy, loves movies. We love Rye Lane, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And he came up with some good picks, bad picks, Tom, and some good dream picks. That was a great episode. Finally, someone picked Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Cracking choice.
I mean,
cracking choice.
Everyone who grew up probably our age, I think they have a real love for Temple of Doom because it was like the first one we watched, I think. Yeah.
We've had Last Crusade has come up in Best Sequel. This is the first time that Temple of Doom has come up in Best Sequel. Yeah, and strictly speaking, I think it's a prequel.
Well, it is if we're looking at the actual timeline of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
But it was made after.
Yeah.
In the middle. It's the middle one.
Prequels tend to be made after, don't they?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Otherwise, it's just the first one in the movies.
Oh, yeah. So this could have been an unequal prequel in theory.
So strictly speaking, a prequel, but we're allowing it. We are allowing it.
I didn't even think about that while talking to him about it. I mean, anyway, it's a great film. I love Indiana Jones. It's nice that anytime we get to talk about Indiana Jones, and
definitely,
apart from the later two, even though we like Dial of Destiny on this podcast.
I like Dial of Destiny.
It's good.
And the other three.
We finally sat down and watched The Son of the Mask. I had been waiting a long time for someone to pick that film.
Yeah. It may be the absolute worst sequel we've watched. Of all the bad sequels.
It's definitely in the running. It would have been worse if we watched the version with the sperm.
Yeah, we missed the sperm bit.
We missed the sperm bit.
I feel like I'm going to have to Google that and try and find it, but I don't really want to Google mask sperm.
It's on YouTube, and it looks awful. Like the special, I was like, is this actually was in a film? It looks like it's made on paintbrush kind of thing. But I can see what he means about the bullets in Roger Rabbit and having faces and stuff. It is mad, but it would have helped in the film to show that, because in the film we watched, they literally turn off a light and wake up again, and that has sex, apparently. It is bad. It's going to be up there. It is legendarily bad sequel as well. I'm surprised he's the first person to mention it, really. No, Matt from Sequelizers mentioned it.
He mentioned it but as being bad, but he didn't pick it, though, did he?
No, he picked another film. And then finally, someone picked the Nice Guys as dream sequel. And he's not wrong. Where are my Nice Guys films?
Yeah.
God damn it.
Let's have some more of that, please.
There should be loads of them, because I love Ryan Gosling, I love Russell Crowe together. And I would watch many, many, many films of those two being together in the Nice Guys. I'll watch an 80s Nice Guys. I want to watch a 90s Nice Guys. I want to watch a noughties Nice Guys. I want Shane Black to write them all, and I'll be a happy person.
Fair enough. And I think this is an opportunity where the sequel sessions for this is incredibly good.
Yes. We talk about writing a lot.
We did. We talked a lot about writing, and Tom was really generous with his kind of chats about and advice about writing.
And very honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom co-wrote Rye Lane. Now, if you haven't seen Rye Lane,
go and watch
Rye Lane. It's a brilliant, brilliant rom-com. We loved it when we watched it last year, and it's just brilliant. And it's on Disney Plus in the UK, Hulu in America.
Hulu, yeah.
And it's very different from the Four Weddings and the Notting Hills and the Richard Curtis's. It feels like it's a London you've actually been to or lived in.
Definitely,
and conversations you would have with people. And I'm really excited to see what him and Nathan do next, or even just Tom does on his own. Again, if you listen to the sequel sessions, you'll find out he's cooking some things, he's writing some things for certain companies or whatever, and it all sounds very exciting. So go check out Rye Lane. He's a brilliant writer, lovely guy, great picks, and go check out his work. He's brilliant.
Absolutely. So if you want to hear those sequel sessions, then what you've got to do is get yourself onto anotherslice.com/unequal sequel. And for $2.99 a month, you can join our subscription service. So you get all the extra bits of these interview episodes, and not just for this season, but for last season too. So you'll get loads of extra stuff, all the sequel sessions there, loads of interesting chats with people beyond movies and about kind of what they do in their lives. And like I say, the one with Tom is so good. If you're an aspiring writer, if you've ever thought about writing, then that is a conversation you really want to listen to, because Tom's advice is incredibly useful. So go listen to that. Also, get yourself on the social medias. Tell your friends about Unequal Sequel. We are Unequal Sequel, all the social media stuff, from Twitter to TikTok, all those kind of things. If you don't do social media and you want to let us know what you thought of Tom's choices, then get on the email and send us an email, unequalsequel@hotmail.com. Also, while you're there, if you wouldn't mind tapping us out a little review, a 5-star review really does help people find the podcast. So please do that if you can. If you've got 5 minutes, tap a quick review out for us. It really does help. Thanks very much.
I'm not quite sure how algorithms work or whatever on that kind of thing, but
good old algae rhythm.
It weirdly does. It does work. As
far as I understand, the way algorithms work is they look a bit like Don Cheadle.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be Space Jam.
But are rubbish.
And it has AI in the title, which is rubbish. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening to season 6. That was season 6, episode 4. We've got another great guest coming next week on season 6, episode 5. So be prepared. That's not a hint. It's not Jeremy Irons from Lion King.
Oh, can you imagine?
I'd love to hear what Jeremy
Irons be.
Might work on that one now. And thank you very much. I've got nothing else to say, so it's a goodbye from me. Bye-bye. And it is a goodbye from him.
Bye!
See you on the next one. Stick to this one. Have a good week. Bye.
I mean, I know it's my job to tell people about Another Slice.
Yeah.
But I genuinely do want people to listen to it, because it really is a good one.
The sequel sessions in this series have been particularly good. I think we've found a gear.
Yeah.
And real questions. And
we've really stepped them up, I think.
The guests have been great as well. So it does help. And next week's is just as good, to be honest. So go on Another Slice.
Yeah, do it now.
Okay, here we go. I've been told to make a trailer, and they said to make it impactful and memorable. So here we go. My name is Dave Curtis, and I will guarantee you probably haven't heard of me, but I host a podcast called Unequal Sequel, and I love movies. Well, this is a new podcast. If you can do something, it's better to do something impossible, because it feels good. Well, I've set myself a mission impossible. You'll see why that's clever in a minute. You may not know it, but Tom Cruise sends loads of people a cake at Christmas. I have set myself a quest to get Tom Cruise to send me that cake. How, you're asking? How, Dave? How is that going to happen? Well, you have to listen to the podcast and find out. That's literally what the podcast is about. It's about Tom Cruise, his career, and me getting the cake from Tom Cruise. Sounds fun, doesn't it? How about you listen along? It's called The Great Tom Cruise Cake Quest. And it will be available wherever you get your podcasts. I don't know about you, but I think I nailed that.